Hello and welcome to this DC Velocity and Supply Chain Quarterly webcast, Beyond Picking Rates, Total Warehouse Optimization with Goods to Person Solutions. My name is Dave Maloney. I'm the Group Editorial Director at DC Velocity and Supply Chain Quarterly. Thanks for joining us today. Order spikes, quick economic changes, and rising wages and a tight labor pool are accelerating the needs for companies to invest in warehouse technologies that have the ability to adapt. For many, goods-to-person solutions can be an answer to be able to automate the storage, picking, moving, and sorting of goods within facilities. However, it's important to take a holistic approach to any automation project. So today we'll look at how that can be done with a unified warehouse solution, one that implements an automated pick, pack, and ship order fulfillment operation, but also providing a high return on investment. So before we begin our presentation today, we have just a few announcements, and we're going to go over those with you now. First, here are some tips to help you connect and participate in the webcast. It's designed to be interactive between you and our presenters, so later in the program we'll have a question and answer session where you can ask them questions relevant to the topics that we discussed today. You can participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during the webcast. You don't have to wait to the very end to get your questions to us. Just whenever the question arises in your head, go ahead and type it into the text box that's located on the bottom of the console and hit the submit question button, and we'll get to as many of those questions during our presentation as time will permit. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. If slides are not advancing, please press the F5 key or Control R on your keyboard to refresh your console. We recommend that you disable any of your pop-up blockers. If you're experiencing any kind of technical problems, please visit our webcast help section that's located by clicking the help link on the media player. So joining us today for this adventure are two experts in automated technologies and how they are to be deployed. Cody Upp is the Vice President of the Sales and Marketing for Numina Group, and Randy Randolph is the Vice President, Channels and Partnerships at Geek Plus America. They'll be coming along to join us in just a minute. And as I said, we'll be looking at Beyond Picking Rates, Total Warehouse Optimization with Goods to Person Solutions. So part of what we're talking about today, we're going to first of all learn a little bit more about Numina and Geek Plus. We're going to look at some of the automation challenges that are out there in the marketplace, what a lot of people are looking at, the problems they're trying to solve, and what are some of the solutions to that. And we'll look at some good goods to person candidates that may be able to resolve some of the problems that they are encountering. Then we'll also look at some parallel warehouse design processes, because when you put something in automation, you add to one area, it's going to affect everything else. You have to look at the total solution, and that's part of what we're going to do, looking at that holistic warehouse design. Then we'll close things out with the question and answer session and give you an opportunity to express any questions that you may have. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Cody Upp and Randy Randolph, and I'm going to first turn it over to Cody to begin today's presentation. Cody?
Hi, thanks for that, David. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. Just by means of introduction, my name is Cody Upp. I'm based out of Chicago, Illinois. And with everyone who operates in the warehousing segment, it's always interesting your origin story. So I'll spend hopefully just a moment here kind of giving you a little bit of context as to who and what I am and how I got into this supply chain that we all hold dear. So, I had a very unique upbringing. It was inside the walls of an organization called Up Technology. And at a pretty young age, I had a unique opportunity to take an owner-operator role, really with the intent to drive that organization to a liquidity event. And that occurred back in 2016 after a healthy tenure at Up Technology to an organization called Aptian, which is a Vista Equity Partners company. From there, I joined a strategy consulting firm out of France called Capgemini, really tasked with leading an Oracle Cloud WMS service line. We had a ton of fun and grew the business and served a lot of really great clients. But a few years later, I had a really unique opportunity to join kind of this revolution that was happening in Boston with the advancement of autonomous mobile robots. And so at that point, I had joined an organization called Six River Systems as one of the first go-to-market hires. and had a great run and brought that organization up to a liquidity event again in 2019 to an organization called Shopify. After a few years on the leadership team there, and back in October of 2022, I had the privilege and honor of joining the Numina Group, leading a team of engineers on the commercial side of the business. And I'm proud to say that is here and what I'm doing today and representing the organization. So thank you all for joining. This should be a great session. I'll pass it over to my esteemed colleague, Randy.
Good afternoon, and thanks, Cody. Hey, David, thanks for the introduction. I'll take just a minute here and give you a little bit of my background and how I believe it's relevant to our conversation today. My origins in the warehouse and in the supply chain solutions area began when barcodes began, and I represented regionally as in an engineering solutions group within a leader in the barcode, a global leader in the barcode scanning, printing, and automation business. As that technology took hold, I moved into the WMS space, where I represented the leading and led management efforts with leading WMS providers, migrating from there into the total solution material handling systems business with the global leaders in material handling systems. I was responsible for the verticals of 3PL, and at that time, an emerging internet business that no one knew would grow into what it is today. Since that time, I've spent almost a decade in 3PL and 3PF, the 3PL and 3PF arenas. And over the last 5 years, I've been working with robotic automation in the supply chain arena with the largest and leaders in that area. I'm looking forward to our conversations today, and hopefully we'll be able to address questions and concerns as we proceed. Back to you.
Great.
Dave.
Yeah,
and Cody. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Randy. So one of the things that we wanted to do, given the fact that today's discussion is limited to a certain amount of time, the conversation will be held at a relatively high level. With that said, and as I had mentioned before, we love getting into the weeds. We love getting into the details, and obviously want to talk specifics about your operation. So what we've done here is we've created some QR codes. So I'll take a second here for you guys to get your phones out and scan these QR codes, which are links directly to both mine and Randy's calendar to set up additional time for some discussion, maybe around your operations or your organizations, or any specific questions that might be unique to you and your business. So feel free to take your phones out and scan these QR codes. It'll be a direct access to our calendars. And coffee is on us, so we'll send you a Starbucks gift card so we can both enjoy a cup of coffee during our discussion. So I'll give you one more second to scan those, and then otherwise we'll have a similar slide towards the end of the deck so that you guys can make sure to find some time on the calendar with us. So that's a great offering. Thank you to the team for putting that together. All right. Well, we won't tease you for too long, but I think we owe it to the audience here to give a little bit of background on both the Numina Group. So I'll kick off, and then, of course, our partner is Geek Plus. So, I like to describe the Numina Group in really three capacities. The first capacity, really first and foremost, is as a software provider. So, we are a software provider of both warehouse execution software, warehouse control software, and voice technology. And really with the WES and the WCS being effectively a flywheel for the rest of the offerings that we have. But most prominently, we are a software development organization. Following that, we're an automation provider, and you can see on the right-hand side, some of the categories that we lean into. But we're a traditional integrator in the sense that we distribute other material handling equipment like Geek Plus technology, but we also do some of our own manufacturing of sortation systems. So, for example, we manufacture a sweeper sorter and some put walls, but rely heavily on the technology market and our execution software to tie solutions together. Thirdly is that we are a service provider. So we have in-house mechanical, electrical, industrial engineering that allows us to provide our clients with really cradle-to-grave services. So from the point of designing a solution to the hypercare once it's installed and the 24/7 by 365 support that these solutions require thereafter. Numina Group prides itself on really being that end-to-end provider to our clients. So again, I'll pass it back over to you, Randy, to introduce Geek Plus.
Great, thanks, Cody. Just a couple quick words about Geek Plus. We are the largest AMR manufacturer and solution provider in the world. We have over 60% of the market share in the Asia market, where the vast majority of AMRs began and are rapidly being deployed, not only in warehouses but throughout commercial, real restaurant and hospital type facilities. We manufacture a multitude of AMRs, solving different problems, including goods to person. And we have 3 different types of AMR solutions and systems in that space. We have solutions in AMRs and shuttles that support storage, sorting, moving, and as a primary solution, picking. And the combination of those can be utilized either as point solutions or as integrated hybrid solutions to solve problems that are challenged in the supply chain arena.
Great. All right, let's get into it. So I think the first question we have to ask about goods to person automation is why would it be on the table? And on the screen here, you see some pretty high level justifications for why we would introduce goods to person, specifically AMR goods to person automation into a design. But I'll start with this. AMR goods to person performance rates are just superior to traditional automation and contemporary forms of automation. Really the baseline, if you will, is around 250 grabs per hour. So if you break that down, what that means is you're looking at 4 picks and puts a minute. And again, if you break that down even further, that's a grab and a put almost every 15 seconds. And again, every operation is unique. Product profiles, order density, the ability to do advanced slotting, all dictates the performance of an operation. But these are decent standards to kind of rest your hat on. And so, taking that one step further, right, the performance of the system isn't just limited to labor. And so when we think about that, 30% storage utilization is a common metric that we use when converting to the P series or the Pop Pick series for a number of reasons. When we look at the P series, Geek Plus Robotics, it's a matter of not having aisles, right? And so being able to create a level of density on the floor with just racking. And then when we look at the Pop Pick solution, we get even greater storage utilization as a function of the fact that that solution goes up 13 feet and can hold 60 totes. And so it's a pretty impressive solution when we think about the actual performance rates relative and in comparison to many of the other options out there that are really serving as kind of functional stopgaps. And I think, not to discredit any one piece of automation, but maybe in particular, a hot topic right now is the collaborative mobile robot market. And to a degree, those are just that. They're stopgaps that kind of bridge performance for an organization. But you can see it on the screen here in the way that I describe it. In some sense, it's almost like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, or at least that's the perception many of our clients have following the implementation, right? There's certainly a performance improvement that occurs in those types of solutions. But the reality of the situation is you're not solving for the labor problem in its entirety. When we're sitting today at roughly 3.7% unemployment, we have 10 million open jobs with only 6 million unemployed. And Randy, I don't know if you recall, but back in 2020, it was at that moment during that year that the number of open jobs surpassed the number of potential candidates for those jobs for the first time. And 3 short years later, we see this gap of 4 million open jobs continuing to expand. And so when clients come to Numina Group, they're really looking for a solution that's going to curb their reliance on direct labor and optimize for performance at a storage utilization level. The second topic I want to talk about as it relates to kind of why autonomous mobile robots in the goods to person segment is just the flexibility. So traditionally, when we design really, really high performance solutions, there's this stark trade-off, if you will, between performance and flexibility. And many of the new era technologies started to kind of break down this barrier, except they didn't achieve the level of performance that we're seeing in goods to person automation. And what's really nice, what's an incredible breakthrough with goods to person automation is this idea that we don't necessarily have to design forward-looking capacity into the system, right? We don't have to build the church for Easter Sunday, if you will. We don't have to take our year-over-year growth for the next 10 years, 5-10 years, and build the capacity into the system. Rather, what we have the ability to do is incrementally grow the number of units, the number of robots in that environment as organizations realize demand. And this is really important for a number of reasons, but most critical is this alignment between capacity and demand, right? And the closer that we can keep those two without sacrificing or putting service levels at risk, the higher utilization we get of the asset. And as we increase the utilization of the asset, we accelerate payback periods. And so this is an incredible attribute, if you will, of the AMR GDP segment. The last thing I'll note with regards to flexibility is just what you can do with this type of technology. So, hinting back at a topic I had just breached, which was the collaborative mobile robot market, there's been this promise of being able to use that type of technology in a number of different facets. Well, firsthand experience shows us that when we deploy AMR goods to person systems, we have the opportunity to not only roll out this technology for picking, but right away roll it out for put away, returns, replens, cycle counts, reslots, what have you. And again, what that allows us to do is really, really sweat that asset. So, I'll stop at those 2 points. Maybe Randy, if it's all right, you can hit the last 2 here. Hey, Randy, can you hear us?
Randy, you may be muted, possibly. Cody, maybe you could pick up those last 2 points where we try to reconnect with Randy.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so, the point here with seasonality is kind of piggybacking on the comment that I had made earlier, which is this ability to increase capacity as needed. Right. And when we have kind of modularized components, as we do in a goods to person environment, we have the luxury of being able to incrementally increase and incrementally decrease capacity as we see fit from a solution design standpoint without really any disruption to the operation. We're just adding units to the grid. And so what this allows us to do is kind of manage that peak to mean that organizations see and do so without having to maintain that capacity for the duration of the year. And so this is an incredible component and again attribute of goods to person automation. Do we have Randy back? I think I hear him.
Yeah, I'm sorry, had a bit of technical difficulty, but yes,
no
the flexibility of dynamically slotting inventory during seasonality is a key element, and that seasonality might be just a week or a promotion. It may take a full quarter or a transitional quarter, and being able to move inventory that is hot for this week or this day forward not only speaks to the ability of the system to flex, but also speaks to the efficiency of the robot travel within the grid. Further efficiency in terms of speed and collation of like items or like seasonal items are complemented in the efficiency as well. And so by being able to move the whole racking units around and collate that or analyze that against the slotted inventory, we're able to bury slower moving items or seasonal items towards the back of the warehouse or several levels deep in the rack, so that those efficiencies can be maintained with the robots, and the forward space, the prime real estate in any facility is utilized by those products that are prime either today or this week or this quarter.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of times, I've referred to it as peanut butter jelly equation, right? When we're ordering one item and there tends to be another item that comes with it. The Geek Plus software application that's native to the technology really does a phenomenal job in finding those pairings and slotting them together. Conversely, there's also the golden zone analysis that I've seen to be done highly, highly effectively with Geek Plus software. So great points there, Randy. We'll jump over to a new topic, which is kind of defining what the ideal profile of a goods to person end user might look like. With that, I'll Randy, why don't you kick us off on this slide?
Sure. So the right person or the right application for goods to person can vary from industry to industry or vertical to vertical. It can also operate very efficiently, not only in a distribution center or 3PL environment, but operate on both ends of a manufacturing operation, both on the raw material goods and the finished goods. So we look at this as does it fit in a pallet on a pallet? If it does it have a weight capacity and within the, let's call it the 1,200 kilogram capacity of weight? If it does those two things, then we know we can move it around very efficiently, and we can minimize the walking that people have traditionally done to either harvest off of pallets or bin locations. The second thing that we look at is there a lot of each picking, a lot of case picking, a lot of master pack picking, or a variance across case, pallet, and picking. And those are the types of things that can be collated at a single picking cell or coordinated across multiple picking cells within the goods to person system. The key drivers and the key things that we work with Numina to do is to look at a day in the life of an e-commerce order, the day in the life of a store replenishment order, a day in the life of a goods to line order, and how orders are fulfilled for the next client, whether that's a supplier in a wholesale or retail environment or the consumer. So once we get a view with our partner Numina on what the data looks like, we can quickly determine whether there's a good fit for goods to person or there may be a better solution. And so we start there and we let not the equipment drive the solution, but the data drive the solution.
Love that. Yeah. And I think you hit on a really interesting point, Randy. I think generally speaking in the industry, there's this misnomer about goods to person automation. With that, you need this perfect e-com order profile of 1.5 lines per order and 1.2 units per line in order to be a candidate for G2P automation. But to the point that you had made, the reality is so long as that product fits on that rack, roughly the size of a pallet, right, it can be stored in a G2P environment. And this really opens up a ton of opportunities. This wasn't the case really pre-Geek Plus. But this opens up a ton of opportunities for solution design when we can access multiple units of measure. And Randy, you had alluded to it, but it really kind of enables this idea of being able to have a singular automation solution servicing so many different channels. Again, whether that's e-com, B2B, retail, replen, distribution, whatever it may be, all within the single tech stack. So it's a phenomenal capability. I do want to touch on Numina's kind of typical customer journey and how many of our clients today are getting to goods to person systems. I think the natural evolution, if we look at a growing business, if you will, or maybe an organization that has maybe a lower risk profile or a lower appetite to issue out some capital, It starts with RDS, which is our real-time distribution software. That's that warehouse execution software layer, being a supplemental orchestration tool and advanced functionality tool that sits underneath either an ERP or a WMS application. We pair that warehouse execution software with traditionally voice technology and some kind of cart. That's the baseline, right? That's where even the lowest volume of operations can benefit from. Then organizations desire more performance, want to reduce reliance on direct labor, achieve more volume in their buildings, and they need to maybe take that same stack of RDS plus voice plus cart and then add an autonomous mobile robot. And today we use Geek Plus's Move bots in order to enable organizations to achieve higher level of performance in doing so. We call that product BatchBot, if you're familiar with it, on our website. And then ultimately, we find ourselves in a situation where customers need that high-end performance, really achieving the highest levels of pick rates and pack rates and ship rates that money can buy. And to that end, that's when we really start thinking seriously about goods-to-person automation. But again, I don't want to leave you with the impression that this type of technology is limited for the few anymore. Right? It's truly been democratized, and because of the modularity of it, the accessibility of it from both a technical standpoint and a financial standpoint really hasn't ever been easier. The last point I'll touch on, which appreciate you, Randy, you hinting to, is the engineering design study. So as an integrator, as a consultant, we find it to be critical to engage in really a 12 to 16 week project well before we ask our clients to make any investments in automation. We call these engineering design studies. And what it allows us to do is just get really, really intimate with your business, really intimate with your operations, and to get inside the data to understand the ebbs and flows of what it will look like in a day in the life of running your volume through a goods-to-person automation. So that is, at least with respect to Numina Group, tends to be kind of the first step we take with our clients.
So I just add one thing to that before we jump on, or as we're transitioning, and that is the people that are currently consuming goods to person across multiple industries and industries that don't know who their next client will be in the 3PL space. So they're comfortable with the flexibility of the solution, that it may need some adjustments in the types of racks that it needs, but that the idea here is that it's future flexible and can allow clients that aren't secure in what the future will bring to both scale and to adjust to that new client that they're bringing in the building.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better, Randy. That tends to be the case specifically in the 3PL segment, but certainly in the ever-changing environments in retail as well. So great,
Absolutely.
Great point. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today was this concept of parallel warehouse processes. As you kind of grow in increasing levels of sophistication in buildings, what you'll find is that you want to align particular automation solutions to particular workflows. In the example that we put here today is this idea of aligning the right item velocity to the right automation solution, and then really having a single system that orchestrates all tasks across process flows with the goal of balancing performance with utilization, while primarily optimizing for the cost associated with the automation, at least in this particular example. And so this is something that we've deployed many times in the last 24 months or so with dividing and conquering across item velocity. So you can imagine a world in which we have AAA, AA movers that we want to carve out. We want to carve that volume out of the goods to person system, slot it in, whether it's pallet flow or case flow, depending upon economic order quantities, and then align the appropriate technology to that volume subset. And in many cases, what we do is we take voice picking technology or voice technology, we pair that with some conveyance to be able to do something called a fast lane, really achieving really, really high rates because the square footage and the number of SKUs is really limited for those double and AAA movers. And then we take our B and C movers, right? The kind of the bread and butter of an operation. And we make sure we can achieve really, really high performance rates by placing those in goods to person automation, whether it's a part of the P series, traditionally the P800s for Numina Group, or whether it's pop pick. Because we know we can achieve some of the highest performance rates on the face of the planet by placing that volume subset into the B and C. Into the goods to person automation. And then lastly, we want to be able to optimize for our dogs, for our D-movers. And with warehouse execution software like real-time distribution, RDS, Numina's WES application, what we have the luxury of doing is creating this process called a batch sweep. And typically what we're doing is we're creating a batch, if you will, of partial orders, all the D-movers that are stored in either high bay racking or in reserve, and we're sweeping those across multiple orders, and then placing those and sequencing them at a consolidation point with the rest of the volume, and we can achieve really high pick rates for really slow moving items. Now the net of all this, right? We've reduced the total cost of automation. We're taking A movers out, which minimizes the number of robots that an application would need, and found a really cost-effective way, but a high-performing way to handle that volume. We're not slowing down the system by keeping D-movers in there because we've created this batch sweeping process. And we have an architecture with RDS that's orchestrating across all three different process flows. And the elegance of this is it's not only doing the task allocation, but it's doing the sequencing. We have an intimate understanding, we have a really solid understanding of the time it takes for material to flow out of each one of these processes. And so we're dropping this work and orchestrating this work in such a way where we have the right materials coming from each one of these processes to a consolidation point at the right time. And so this is the magic that you can do when you have sophisticated technologies like RDS. So with that said, I know I hogged up this slide, Randy. Anything else you may want to touch on before we pop over to the remaining slides here?
Right. So the challenge that the challenge that exists in the market, in addition to rate, is how do I maintain the rate through the sequence of operation and then coordinate that. And so if you simply look at this this rendering that's in front of you, this portrays a pop pick solution, which is a robot to robot solution, and right behind the robot solution there's another robot solution. So what we're looking at and what we're seeing in the trending today with our clients is they want to buy a robot solution and they realize that they need to go robot to robot, or maybe go robot to robot to robot. And I know your next slides will get into that further, but this is where we start beginning the kind of the master plan of how do you look at building a solution that and an ecosystem that'll support where you want to be, or where you see things moving in those areas.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. All right, we'll talk a little bit about what it means to kind of have a holistic warehouse design as well in the context of goods to person automation. So if we kind of look in the rearview mirror, call it a half a decade, maybe closer to 7 years, and you kind of cumulatively look at the amount of investment that's been poured into intralogistics and into warehouse automation, we're talking billions and billions of dollars of capital. And really the majority of this investment, or a significant portion of this investment, has been in the development of point solutions. And they've come with varying levels of software on top of them, varying levels of data and analytics, and almost always with some hardware component. And this has manifested itself in the form of loaders and unloaders, and put away and replen solutions, and even cycle counting and order release and cartonization packages, and of course dozens of picking, sorting, consolidating capabilities, and not to mention kind of pack and ship automation solutions as well. And when we think about kind of how we engage with a client, right, goods to person automation is, as Randy had alluded to, it could very well be treated as a point solution. But what we want to do is holistically understand the implication that implementing goods to person automation has. As supply chain practitioners, we firmly understand the consequences of pulling down one lever, it pops up 3 others. And so for us, the goal is to design and operate a unified operation that really avoids islands of automation. And Numina supports its clients in achieving this, of course, through those engineering design studies, and of course, through our warehouse execution software being the thread that sews these point solutions together, but also through a solution called PACT, which is what I'll wrap up here in the next slide. But I'm sure Randy, you've got a couple more points to make here before we get there.
Sure. So every unless it's a greenfield operation, our integrators and Numina always starts with what you have today and how do you sow a strong ROI with automation into the existing brownfield solution. And in doing that, you have to look broadly, and you have to find basically the prime cut or the biggest challenge in the current facility. And what we're finding is that that our suite of AMR solutions and goods to person, both used in different ways, helps solve those elements. But again, it always starts with a holistic look, and then and the highest ROI or the biggest challenge. And I know that's where we're looking at implementing our technology very quickly, and we'll get into how the continuous flow within this warehouse is complemented by your solutions, Cody.
Yeah, which leads us to what I believe is our last slide here. And so fast forward, look 6 months ahead, look 12 months ahead. You've implemented or you've decided to implement goods to person automation, and in all likelihood, you've achieved 2-3x the performance rates of your picking operations. And this is kind of the circumstance in which we've established this product called PACT, P-A-K-T, as a defined solution within the Numina group. So what Numina kind of saw in the marketplace was an incredible amount of advancement taking place in improving pick rates. And Geek Plus not only does that, but they've continued to innovate and do R&D and downstream applications as well. And we're excited to continue to implement those solutions as they harden, they come into the market. But what we wanted to do was really demystify the automation associated with pack and ship, right? So we doubled and tripled pick rates. And then what happens, right? We have this screeching halt of a bottleneck that hits pack and ship. And so again, that's why we developed PACT. And there was a few design principles that we had in establishing PACT as a product. It's actually a solution we've deployed over 150 times through our 30 years of history, but it was more custom and bespoke in nature. So when we hardened PACT as a product, we made a few really key decisions. First and foremost, it was to make everything modular. So you see 9 different components, if you will, of a PACT solution here. And everything is modular in that it can be inserted and taken away, and the numbers can be flip-flopped. And this is not only from a hardware perspective, but most importantly from a software perspective, which really leads me to our second design principle, which is that the software that controls PACT is the same technology that does your order release, your cartonization, your zoning, your sorting, all the rest of it, which is RDS's warehouse execution software. It's a control software capability that's embedded within the same technology stack. And the elegance of that is that we have a single system operating all functions of your outbound process. So again, it's the same software as the WES that's orchestrating all the tasks at that pre-order release level. Another design principle we had as a function of the market just screaming at us was managing all the headaches associated with compliance labeling. So anyone who's spent any amount of time in the retail segment knows that it's definitely a moving field goal post with every new trading partner you add on into your distribution channels, and making sure that you're compliant into the labeling that they request. And so you can see that print and apply tunnel where we can add side apply printers, front apply printers, and really support and manage and stay, having our fingers on the pulse of the market as these compliance labels change, and really take all of that uncertainty and all of that manual operation that yields chargebacks and put it into a fully automated system. The last 2 points I'll make is making sure that these investments are feasible for everyone, right? And so for that, we needed to make sure that we got the right components and the right technology stack and the right deployment structure in order to yield an 18-month payback. Last, but certainly not least, it's the idea of aligning the capacity of PACT to that of the picking solution to really achieve this concept of a 3-legged stool, right? we want to make sure that we can increase and decrease the capacity of pack to match whatever picking solution that we've designed for the client. And in today's example, that would be our goods to person automation partnership with Geek Plus. So I wanted to share that with you because when we install these goods to person automation solutions, it really should not be in the vacuum of just picking. We need to take it into consideration the implications that has to all of pick, pack, and ship. So with that, I want to bring it back to David Maloney and field any questions that are out there. I do want to remind everyone that we have these QR codes. So feel free to pull out your phones, scan them, get on our calendars, and we'll look forward to sending you a gift card to buy you a cup of coffee and have a conversation. But again, with that, I'll pass it back to you, David.
Thank you, Cody. It is time for our question and answer session of the webcast. And a reminder, you can just go ahead and ask your questions now. Submit those to us. We'll get to as many of those as we can during the broadcast. And if we don't get to your question, we'll try to have somebody follow up with you directly. So the first question is directed at Randy. How does an all-in-one total warehouse solution prepare for points of failure issues?
Sure. Well, Cody, did you want to answer that, or do you want me to answer that one? I can
yeah, feel free to take a stab. I'll round you out.
Yeah. So when we look at redundancy and systems that can support a warehouse business continuity, we're looking at redundant servers, no single point of failure within the AMR solution, with an extra charger, an extra robot to maintain that 99.9% service level for the operation. So when we look at it, we build it with those fail safes in mind. It's architected that way so that there's no single point of failure, and it's intended to complement the other solutions that are in the warehouse. You know, our AMRs are battery operated, so there is an ability to operate during a short power outage, but there's always need for power in a facility. So looking at the support holistically, whether that's backup power, redundant access lines, those are important things to have in this equation.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think one thing that I'll add is that's a whole phase, if you will, of our engineering design studies is continuity planning. In many scenarios, when we have the development of these parallel warehouse processes and introducing multiple forms of technology into the building, a byproduct of that decision is having the ability to default to other technologies should we see any kind of service level failure in any one of them. And so, Randy, I'll applaud you on your response, and I'll keep it short there. So, pass it back to you, David.
Thanks, Cody. The next question from one of our viewers is dealing with the real-time distribution software, the RDS, and they'd like some clarification on this. Does the RDS bypass the WCS, the WES, the RMS that are typically provided by the goods-to-person providers like Geek Plus? And they want to know, if we already have a WMS in place, what benefit would bringing an RDS into the solution? What benefit would that be?
Yeah, no, I think that falls into my camp. So when we think about kind of the future of the supply chain technology stack, the warehouse technology stack, it's changing. It's definitely changing. And whoever posted that question certainly understands the intricacies of today's automation landscape, because the majority of automation providers, they have to bring some level, some layer, albeit in relative comparison to RDS, typically a pretty thin layer of warehouse execution software. And that layer of warehouse execution software is applicable to their automation. And so I'll start there. The second part of that question was, how do we think about kind of how WMS and RDS play nicely with one another? So really the WMS of the future is going to be a system of master data, right? It's going to own items, inventories, and locations, and it's going to be a functional order system as well, receiving purchase orders and sales orders from external systems, if you will. Where RDS functions is almost as a middleware. So it's functioning as an integration layer, both to the WMS in a lot of scenarios, an ERP application, but also southbound to the automation. And so when we think about RDS, we think about it not only as an integration layer, not only as kind of advanced functionality that typically supplements the capabilities of a WMS, which we might need a whole other webinar to discuss those capabilities, but also the orchestration layer, right? Being able to have that bird's eye view across automation solutions. And so going back to the point that I had originally made, of course, majority of automation solutions are going to have thin layers of execution software that reside within their application. RDS's priority is making sure that we have line of sight to all the automation solutions. And maybe a quick point of clarification based upon the intent behind that question. RDS is fully capable on both the WES side, which I kind of define as order and task orchestration, as well as the control software side, which is the really machine-to-machine communication that needs to exist at the automation level. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think I would just add one other element here, and that is, every site or client can be a bit different, right? So the ratio of how much is supported by the thin layer of WES in the application, and the speed that of implementation that's needed to make the season may also drive at least the phase one implementation. You want to always look at it holistically, but there are ways to deploy the technology stack and leverage what you have today to get to where you want to be tomorrow. And we've done that with Numina on several of our rollouts, and I think that's another way to look at this: is how do we get you going to generate the ROI, and then where do we want to be as the other components are executed and delivered.
Yeah, that time to value piece, we certainly have different cards to play. That's a great point, Randy.
Great, thank you. The next viewer question, I think, is probably coming from a 3PL, possibly. They want to know, how does holistic warehouse design approach work in a multi-client environment?
So I'm just going to start with the goods to person piece, and then Cody, why don't you expand from there as it relates to PAC and some of these other technologies. And goods to person, at least as it relates to Geek Plus, multi-client was built from the beginning. So it's a baseline functionality that you can have multi-owners in a client with multiple SLAs. And obviously you could potentially have the same SKU but owned by different companies within the same facility. We architect our workstations so that each workstation is effectively agnostic by client, unless it needs to have some specialization. So if in the morning you're working client A, you can have all your workstations working client A. In the afternoon, you have high speed or need to have, say, 10 of your workstations working client B, C, and D, and 10 working on A. You can do that and vary the workload across that. We support multi-client to the rack level within the goods to person system. So a single rack would only contain one client.
Yeah, that's great. And anyone who's spent any amount of time in the 3PL space knows that there's always that requirement to have some inventory segregation. Not that systems can't handle it, but for the peace of mind for those clients. So yeah, I think about it a few ways. Maybe I'll put an asterisk next to the comment I made regarding the WMS space. Specifically as it relates to third-party logistics, because the one other really critical component of master data in the 3PL space is that client-level data and the ability to drive billing off of that, right? And so at both the Geek Plus level and the Numina level, that stays consistent in the WMS layer. And so to that end, we have this luxury of having kind of these clients treated a little bit heterogeneously. What I mean by that is, if you're a 3PL and you have multi-tenant operation, many times you look at that operation effectively as having N number of companies that you're operating for N number of clients that are in that warehouse. And I think we want to start really thinking about breaking down those walls between clients to the degree to which we can, and to the degree to which your contracts allow you to be able to achieve density and aggregation across clients. Now, the work that we're doing within the multi-tenant world today is heavily rooted at the RDS level, right, at the warehouse execution software level, is in driving a particular metric called variable cost per unit. So the beauty of having that bird's eye view of the entirety of the operation is that we can drive data and analytics and really cost attribution of both automation, labor, and infrastructure back to the client level. So if you talk to anybody in the multi-tenant world, one of the biggest problems that they face is only reporting a profit and loss at a building level rather than at a per client level. And again, when you have an execution system that sits above all the point solutions, we start getting all the transactional data, all of the telemetry from the different machine-to-machine communication that we're having in order to attribute back costs at the client level based upon the volume that we're processing. And when you can get that variable cost per unit data, you unlock the ability to understand profitability at a client level. So that's some of the important work that we're doing right now.
Great. We're getting a couple of questions in that have to deal with implementation and with the RDS system and just
Sure.
ways whether it's agnostic or exactly how it works. For example, this one would like to know, how does your software integrate with current WMS software such as Oracle or other third-party software?
Great. Yeah, so, not to get into a full-blown integration discussion, but like at the highest level, you have northbound and southbound communication coming from host systems and warehouse execution software applications. The way to delineate the two, of course, as I had stated before, is you have items, inventories, and locations residing at the WMS level, and you have tasks residing at the execution software level. And the WMS's role is making allocation against inventory and creating those tasks. Let's start there. Once those tasks are created, there needs to be a southbound message, right? Whatever message structure and protocol we decide to use for the actual integration itself, there has to be a southbound message communicating those tasks down to the execution software. And as those tasks achieve different progress statuses, as that order flows through the warehouse, it's the job of the execution software to communicate back up to that warehouse management software to notify them that, hey, it's been allocated, it's been picked, it's been packed, it's been shipped, right? The other component of this is the communication to traditionally automation, of course, but manifesting software as well, right? So in order to achieve that 1Z tracking number from UPS, we need to make a call out there to their API. And so that's another northbound and southbound interaction with manifesting software. As it relates to particular applications, we've been here for 35 years. We call ourselves an integrator for a reason. Oracle is an application we've integrated with many, many times and in many different flavors. Of course, Oracle has a ton of different products under its umbrella. And we'd be happy to maybe answer questions specific to your environment at a later date. So scan that QR code.
There you go. And a reminder, yes, do scan the QR code for additional information and to contact directly with Cody and Randy. We have time for just a couple more questions. This one is wanting to know how does the RDS orchestrate order processing with different product sizes, some that possibly can't be automated?
Perfect. I'll try to keep this one short. We can designate certain products within an item master to certain material handling types. And then we can assign certain material handling equipment to certain users based upon permissions and accessibilities. And so at the item master level, we're flagging the material type associated with that SKU, and then we're flagging the equipment type against that material type in order to make sure that we're allocating that particular item to the appropriate piece of MAG. That's at a high level how we handle that.
Okay. Here's another implementation question asking about how agnostic the RDS technology is. They want to know, does it come with pre-built APIs or connectors for such solutions? They'd ask, for example, like AutoStore, vertical lift modules, conveyor, sortation equipment, etc.
Yeah, so we publish our own public APIs, right? And so like our gold standard is a JSON message over HTTPS protocol that you can write to our APIs with. But as an integrator, right, we have the opportunity to write to vendors and technology partners APIs as well. So we're continuing to kind of bolster our partnership ecosystem, especially with, I'll promote Geek Plus here, given the strong relationship we have and the tightening and the hardening of that integration. I think it's only fair for me to share with you, there's no such thing as a plugin integration in warehousing today, right? Every integration requires some level of nuance and customization based upon the database structure of WMS applications and ERP applications. So anyone who's kind of leaving you with the impression that you can click a button and be fully integrated is probably not being entirely truthful, and we want to make sure we're setting appropriate expectations there.
Okay, I think we have time for just one more question. We saw during the pandemic how quickly things can change, how demand can ramp up for the different kinds of products that maybe are sought over other products, how quickly inventory changes. So in looking at automation, how does a company benefit from implementing a goods-to-person system or other automation in a never-changing market? Does that kind of tie back to some of the flexibility that you had talked about earlier?
Sure. And I'll just mention this. I was at a facility, I guess it was last week actually, that I had never been to. The client had never seen a goods-to-person system except for a webcam view that we took them on during COVID because they were restricted from traveling. They were looking for an interim solution because they had planned to build a new building at a later date, and now they are building a new building. So number of changing elements in the that they had to address. One is this something I can put in on scale? Is this something I can put on multiple floors? And when I get my new facility that'll be 50 feet high, is there a way that I can address the ground level and the above ground level? The answer to that, and it was nice to be validated in last week's meeting, is the answer is yes. I can scale this during COVID. I can expand it after COVID as the demand keeps peaking, and I can pick it up and move it when my new building is ready. And all of those elements, from initial purchase order to first season go live was in weeks, not years. So those are the kinds of things that goods to person can offer in terms of flexibility, rapid speed to results, and future flexibility in terms of not knowing necessarily how quick or fast your growth curve might be or where your next building will be.
Great. That's one thing we have learned through all the COVID years is the need to have flexibility in part of the design. So thank you for that answer. And unfortunately, we are out of time for additional questions. We had other questions come in. If you didn't get your question answered, we encourage you to go ahead and scan that QR code for the free coffee chat with Cody and Randy. And also you could go to their websites too for Geek Plus and Numina to gather additional information for the Numina Group and Geek Plus. So gentlemen, thank you very much for a very informative session. We want to remind people, because we did have somebody ask this question, shortly after our event, we will send you an email reminder so you could access the presentation again if you came in a little bit late, or if you want to view it again, or even share it with another colleague of yours. So you'll have an email reminder with a link there to be able to do that. You can also download a PDF of the slides that we used today. You can go to the resources tab that's on your console, and you can download the slides in a PDF format. All right, thanks again to Numina Group and Geek Plus for making today's presentation possible. We'd also like to thank you, our audience, for joining us today. We know your time is very valuable. We hope that you walked away with some good ideas to better your own supply chains. For all of us at DC Velocity and Supply Chain Quarterly, I'm Dave Maloney. Have a great rest of the day.